This is Beat 'em Down from Cult 45, the movie podcast, and you are listening to the Geek World All-Stars podcast network.
So, George, you have any questions before we officially start?
Language.
What do we try to use it.
Sometimes we do sign language. No, it's fine.
We've done Sanskrit. I mean,
it's so funny because, I've been uploading the audio to YouTube, which it doesn't get a lot of views, but in the last month we've had two of our videos that were guest podcasts, where we had people on, get age restricted because of language.
Okay. I will do everything I can to keep it PG. It's never out of anger, just always out of enthusiasm.
Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what? I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people. Right. You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one too.
Quarter pounder with cheese and France, Mickey? What? Boy, ale with cheese. Yeah. I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice that my progeny to view of a mighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success? Hey, everyone. You're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host, Dave.
And John.
And JD, I'm also in trouble.
Yes, you are in trouble. John doesn't know because he wasn't on the responses.
John doesn't read the emails.
No, he doesn't.
Why would I want that trouble?
God forbid we have a plan going into things. Yes. I'm not supposed to be here tonight, but I'm here. I emailed Dave and said, look, I got to bail. My wife's not happy with me doing the show tonight, so I can't do it. He's like, well, you invited your friend on the show. So that's not fair. And I told my wife, I did invite my friend on the show. So she said, that's fine. You can do your show and sleep in the office tonight. And I said, oh, yes, dear. And so retreated to the comfort of my office where I will spend the next 12 or so hours.
Well, since you set it up beautifully, do you want to introduce your friend?
I met George O'Connor 11 years ago in the first ever Comics Experience online course. And we've been friends for a little over a decade now. And he's an insanely talented creator with his own Kickstarter that is up and running and doing quite well at the moment. And I said, hey, man, you got to come on the show and push your Kickstarter some more so that I can get more of my friends' attention.
Thanks, man.
I owe you for the T-shirts you bought me in Japan, so it's the least I can do.
Oh, dude, that's just bros being bros. All right, there's no transaction there.
This is a thank you. Let's help get you funded.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it, and it's great to meet John and David. Thank you all so much for having me on.
Oh no, thank you for doing it. So, I guess we'll start out with the question we normally ask our guests: is comic writing something you always wanted to do?
No. The whole plan for a good chunk of my life was, heavy metal rock and roll mansion. And along the way, I got into writing and acting, along with being a musician. I still am. Mm-hmm. I've just realized like part of me is never going to die until my hands break. It's just something I love doing. But I discovered filmmaking and writing kind of along the way. And I'll try and do this quickly. So with a film group up here in Boston, we got together, and in a handful of years, we made like 60 short films together. That handed itself off to a web series that I created that's still up on YouTube. It's called 664, The Neighbor of the Beast.
Okay.
And we shot, it's about a husband and wife buy a house and realize they've moved next door to Satan, who's trying to live a quiet suburban life away from hell. and hilarity ensues.
George is very good at titles too.
We shot 34 episodes of that over a 2+ year stretch. And by the end of that, where I was writing the next episode so we could shoot it, so I could edit it, so we could write the next one.
Yeah, basically
chasing my tail for 2+ years. When we finished the second season, I was like, all right, I need a break. And what I kind of found during that break is around that same time, I was starting to watch more and more stuff about San Diego Comic-Con, and this was right before it spiked. Like, it was growing, but it was before the Twilight spike.
Yeah.
And I'm watching the coverage going, I think I want to go to Comic-Con. And by the 4th day of coverage, I'm like, we're going to Comic-Con. And so going to my first Comic-Con in 2008 re-sparked my interest in comics. So I've been a kid, in the whatever the early 80s, like the Claremont X-Men were my way in. But then I grew up and my older brother moved out, so that easy ride to the shop went away. And so I kind of drifted away from comics, but I have been and always will be, nerd, geek, whichever word you want to throw out there. So 2008 kind of like recharged it all. And I was sitting in a panel. It was, and I will always remember this. It was Oni's How Not to Break Into Comics. And as they were talking through it, and I was actually sitting next to a friend of mine who's an artist, and I'd known him for years, it dawned on me, like, comics, that's the way that I could keep telling kind of like cinematic visual stories. Because one of the hampering things about short film is there's kind of like a rule of thumb. If you can't shoot it, don't write it. So basically, if you don't have access to a pirate ship, don't write an epic pirate movie because you can't do anything with it.
Right.
So that's why 80% of the web series and our shorts happened at my house. But you get the right artist, you've got yourself an epic pirate tale that you can tell.
Right.
And so that began, as JD said, I guess at this point, an 11-year journey through writing comics, along with, still doing the music and scripts and stuff like that. But like output wise, comics has been my main thing for 10, 11 years at this point.
Cool. Which actually, that's a good segue, because I watched the Kickstarter video for Charlie's Place, and the concept sold me right away, because you mentioned, finding your tribe and Comic-Con. And it's one of those things where, like, as most geeks will say, we spend our lives feeling like we're on the outside. And like the first time I went to Comic-Con, which was in 1999, was a local convention here in Philadelphia. I was like, I feel like I found my tribe. I feel like I'm home. And I'm like, all right, I got to read this book because this appeals to me more than anything.
Thank you, man. That was one of kind of like, I don't know, kind of the human truths, as overdramatic as that might sound. But one of the human truths I know I wanted to tap into was putting it together. And then, the creative team of Meredith Laxton, Ali Pepitone, and Taylor Esposito just like picked that ball up and ran with it. It was the idea of like, they're like entire worlds, like all around you and right behind you that we don't know whether we're ignoring them by purpose or accident, or we're just so in our heads we kind of lose what's happening on the periphery. Right. With Charlie, when we find him, he's a guy who has kind of isolated himself because he's afraid he's too broken to be worthy of anybody's love or attention. And because he doesn't feel like he's worthy of that, he just kind of blinders down, does his thing, goes home, and that's it.
Right.
But what we find out is that, no, actually, and I think we all kind of have that moment where you think nobody cares, if you're on the creative side, nobody cares what I'm making and all that stuff.
Right.
But then, throughout, I don't know, life just going through it, you kind of realize, no, actually a lot of people have my back. It's just the dumb lizard brain part that's kicking in, telling us, the lies
of
the lizard brain.
What was the inspiration to make him a vet?
When I was putting this together, I happened to just be catching a bunch of shows that had turned the PTS veteran into a crazy psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
In a short amount of time, like I said, multiple shows kind of hit that trope. And if it was just one, it would have been one. But like I said, it was a bunch in a short amount of time. And it just struck me as a combination of bullshit and lazy. Sorry, I just demonetized you. Here, we'll edit. We'll edit it.
We don't make any money. It doesn't matter.
We'll just say something else and put it over your mouth moving.
Here, we'll just give you a clean. Clean BS. It was BS and it was lazy, because I do have military friends, and while they might be going through what they're going through, they are not dangerous. They are not on the edge or anything like that. They're just, and it, like all of us, we're all dealing with our own stuff.
Right.
And 99% of us are doing it kind of quietly, maybe
they do kind of portray that a lot. Like they do kind of portray, like almost every TV series I've seen, it's always like the one with the homeless vet is always like the guy who's, suddenly bursts out with a knife or something.
Right. And that's just not the case, So when I was putting the pieces of Charlie together, I did want to use the shorthand of the homeless vet. Like, how do you end up in Charlie's spot? Sorry for the pun on that. But the homeless vet is a shortcut, but then we did the work to make him more than the cliche.
Right.
He can function. He's just on an elevated scale going through some stuff. And we've all felt like whatever we're going through, we're bringing down the people around us. We don't want to put our burden onto the people we love because we love them and they love us, and it feels unfair. And so, we've all felt that. Well, you put it into a comic book, you turn it up to 11 and, you tell a story.
Right.
These last 5 minutes, like the book's actually funny. The thing we were trying to, I tried to do, and then Meredith, Alley, and Taylor so expertly picked up and ran with, was some of my favorite books are ones where you can be laughing on one page and then you turn it and, there's something they hit you with something very human and very real. I've loved books like those. My Northern Lights for this book have been a lot of Terry Moore, so Strangers in Paradise or Motor Girl, but then also kind of more recently Scotty Young, his Middle West and I Hate Fairyland books. I think are just 4 wonderful examples of how you can tell ridiculous, over the top, like worthy of the comic book medium stories, but it can still have a human core and heart that you can use to tell a story. So that, that was the bar I set for myself. And now, now's the fun part of putting it out into the world and seeing if we cleared it or we ganked it.
That is always the tough part. And any artistic endeavor is presenting it to everyone going, like me. I mean, like my work.
Yeah. Look, I just came across a tweet that was essentially like, every time a creator puts something out there, all they're asking is for you to love them. I was like, now will you love me? It's like, it's too close to home, Twitter. Stop that.
It's more like pay me, right? Pay me, please.
I think some of I think most of us have like set the sail on that. Like, we kind of realize like that part, that's the unicorn in all of this, but even on a small level, we can be loved.
We'll pay you an exposure.
Of course.
Oh, God.
Heard that before.
Rent-worthy exposure.
I in a former life, I played in a couple different bands, and yes, I've been there too. It's like, but playing here is great exposure.
Yeah, I will say one of the nice things about being a creative of an older, I don't know, a gentleman of an older age, is you do get to leave kind of all that behind. Like I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, there were some dark months when I realized, oh, that Rock and Roll Mansion's not going to be coming over the horizon. Now what the hell do I do? I've got a basement with 13 guitars in it, and, you know, kind of all this stuff. And, you know, I'll admit, like, you know, for a while, I wasn't the most pleasant person to be around. I was essentially in a mourning period. You know, the dream of the 16-year-old had to be put to bed.
Right.
But what it did do is I realized, well, if I'm going to make anything, it's got to be because I enjoy it, and that the experience should be as fun and as stress-free as possible, because that's all, you know, we can control. We have no idea if the Kickstarter will fund. We have no idea if somebody will download the album or anything like that. We don't control that.
Right.
So if there is no promise of money at the end, if, you know, there's someone who isn't paying us, why would you go through hell knowing like there's no, you know, like monetary payoff or something like that? So that's why I try and go into all these projects of trying to make it, like I said, as fun, enjoyable, and collaborative as possible, because that's what we can control, and whatever happens after that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my own personal opinion, I think the reason creative people do what they do is because we have to express ourselves somehow, you know, and it really isn't about the money, you know. I mean, that would be nice, but,
yeah,
but it's really about there's something in us we need to get out into the world.
I like playing What If, you know. I still get inspired. I'm still curious. I still want to try things, you know. On the music side, over these last couple of years, I'm becoming a lot better of an engineer and mixer. And I'm really proud of that. I can hear, like, over the last 3 years, I can get better with it. And that's great. That is fulfilling. If we bring it back to the reason I'm talking to y'all, with Charlie's Spot, it's easily the best thing I've written. And it's because I'm learning the craft, and I'm learning how to use that craft in a collaborative way, you know, and showing this book to people and hearing their takes on it. And someone had just said, you know, I appreciate, you know, the, God, I had it and lost it, but, you know, he's like, you know, I like how you use dialogue, you know, you don't overstay your welcome.
Right.
And that's something I've been working on. Like, you look at the first comic I did, like right after coming from screenplays and short films, like, it's just monologue. It is it's word bubbles, and they're accidentally got some art in the way, you know. But part of maturing and learning the craft is kind of realizing, like, no, like, the process might start with the writer, but it's a visual medium, and you have to honor that, you know, how people take the medium in, but then also your collaborators. You know, it's cliche, but, like, if I write, you know, our character stares down 10,000 samurai, I'm done in 5 seconds. That's a week for the artist.
Right.
You know? So it's kind of, you know, just like I said, learning the craft along the way and being able to, like, okay, I improved. Am I good? I don't know. That's not my job. I'm also an artist, which means I can never say I'm good. There's, you know, some sort of, like, Clockwork Orange reflex about that. Cool. That's the first time I'd used that analogy. I didn't know if it was going to land. I'm glad I found the right audience for that one. You know, but you know, like I said, that curiosity and just wanting to improve just for its own sake.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. JD didn't laugh, so he probably didn't get the reference.
I got it. Oh, he's a baby.
He's putting his bed together in the basement.
In the basement, I got an office.
It's Fortnite.
It's bed right here. I don't even play video games, so I don't get that one.
You just get to build a little cushioned fort.
Oh, that I have. That's already been done.
So playing the game of What If?
Yeah.
If the book is successful, this is issue number 1 that we're kickstarting, right? So do you have other issues planned after that?
It is a 4-issue series, and those 4 issues are done.
Okay.
So this is kind of the first domino of the Kickstarter for the first issue is the first domino of, well, what avenue are we going to go down next?
Right.
That could be bringing the second issue to Kickstarter soon. That could be just going right to a graphic novel version of it, throwing that right out there. So part of this is the learning experience as well. Like, you know, we talked about it earlier. Like, you know, this is you know, step one is making the thing. Step two is seeing if the world cares.
Right.
You know? And you know, so far I'm really happy. This is the 6th comic book Kickstarter I've run, the 5th in like the last 2.5 years. So, you know, pretty tight. This, with 2 weeks to go, this had become the most backed Kickstarter I had, like the number of people backing it.
Right.
And we're on the precipice of it being the most funded book I've ever done.
You need $251 more. That's it for the next 2
weeks. Is that where we're at?
Yep.
I was just looking at it.
So I'm thinking about $100. So around that mid 3,800, like around 3,850, that'll be the most I've raised on a book for Kickstarter.
Cool.
So
I love hearing that.
Yeah, that's a couple things that, you know, I am one of like my hobbies is dissecting the stupid creative lizard brain. Because I'm terrible. And I am trying to not be terrible, and I'm trying to help people when they kind of go through these things. So like one of my isms is I'm really good at turning wins into losses. So trying not to do that. You know, in the past, I would look at the rate that this has been funded and look at other people, you know, contemporaries, friends, and see how theirs funded faster, you know, blah, you know, all that stuff. And I would turn this into a loss. When the fact of the matter is, this, like I said, this more people have backed this than anything else I've backed than I put out there before. We will cross that 3,850 threshold. We are going to get funded, you know, with 7 days. Yeah, as this is recording, 7 days left, and I guess $251. Like, and I've had a chance to share the whole series with some people, and man, the crown I'm wearing right now is I've made 2 grown men cry. That's a win, you know.
Yes.
So that's what's, you know, and like I said, that's something I'm, you know, I want to get better at as well. Is you know, there is a Kickstarter isn't just some weird, I don't know, magical thing. It's hard work, it's planning, and it's something you can grow on as a creator and producer.
Would you attribute your success right now to your subtle use of David Bowie?
You think it's subtle, you just wait. Does it ever hurt when you bring Bowie into the mix?
No,
not at all. No. But, you know, kind of bouncing that off, you know, what's made this project really easy to talk about is, like, I've talked about him a little bit, but Meredith Laxton, our illustrator, Ali Pepitone, the colorist, and Taylor Esposito, the letterer, are so goddamn good that I can bypass my own isms. I don't have to talk about me. I've got 3 incredible artists who did elevating work. And so I can just like put the spotlight on Meredith, on Ali, on Taylor, because truly they were an absolute dream to work with. You know, like I said, I'm a collaborator at heart. I love throwing creative energy around and ideas around and watching how people take it and it and build it into something more than I thought it could be, and better, and watch them put their own creative DNA and passion into it. I'm not a dictator. I'm not a my way or highway type of person at all. And so, you know, starting off with Meredith, who is just a wonderful, just the stars aligning, being able to work with her. This, depending on how the timeline falls out, this might be the first big thing she's done. But her 2021 is going to look great. She's got this book. She's got Charlie Spot. She also did a book called MPLS Sound with Joe Illidge. who's DC editor for years. Awesome dude. She's going to have that. I believe it's coming out as a graphic novel somewhere in 2021. And she's a fantastic storyteller on her own. So getting to be able to work with somebody who could see that script, see what I was going for, and go, okay, what if we chop these panels, merge these, push, pull, and I'll just say it, like, when you get to the end of the book, if you like the last 2 pages of the book, you're probably going to incorrectly credit me with the ending of the book. It's Meredith. Like, if you read the book, like, basically, if this is an 80-page story, I originally, like, on page 78, I was like, we're done. And I was really happy with that ending. I thought I nailed it. I thought I was very, very writerly. And she read it. She's like, I like it, but what about X, Y, and Z because of ABC? I was like, oh, my Lord, you're right. So, those last 2 pages are 100% her, made the book exponentially better. And that's just the biggest thing I can point to. We got 80 pages of her taking and making things, improving things and making them better. If you like David Bowie, and you like David, in quotes, you can't see me, podcast world, but finger quotes. If you like David Bowie, it's Meredith. It was her kind of like initial idea that I just leaned into. And our book is better for it. So she was a dream to work with. She knew Allie for colors, and beyond like the talent that Allie has, and Allie is an incredibly talented colorist. What I will forever be grateful for her is, she came in about halfway through the production. Like this book has also been in the works, and I found the email recently. It's been in the works since July 4th, 2018. That's when Meredith and I were introduced to each other. So it's been 2+ years. And about halfway through that is when we started to get the colors going. And Allie came in with such energy and enthusiasm that it reminded me, like, oh, right, I love this book. That's why we're doing this. We just kind of gotten caught up in, you're in the middle of the project. Nothing sexy happens in the middle of the project. You're just grinding through because it's the middle of the project. Right. So her coming in and just, like I said, that shot in the arm, that reminder of how much I loved this book and this story and how much I wanted to get out into the world was fantastic. And then Taylor, originally I was going to let her to this book and it would have been fine. Like, you can pick up my work and you can follow the flow. You're not going to get lost. You're not going to go, ew, and put the book down. It would have been fine. Mm-hmm. But when it was time to let her, I had brought in a mutual friend of JD's and mine. His name's Rich Duick. He's a fantastic writer on his own. I brought him in to edit the book because I wanted to be as good as I could for this book. Mm-hmm. Meredith comes in and she crushes it. She's elevating the book. Allie comes in. She's crushing it. She's elevating the book. And it just hit me like, so I'm going to take this whole thing to like the 10-yard line and go, good job, guys. Let's kick the field goal. Like, that's right. That undercuts everybody's work that they've done to that point. And so when I started looking for a pro, pro to let her to this, I knew Taylor from comics Twitter. And anybody steps foot in a comic book store on a Wednesday, you've seen Taylor's name and you've seen his work from Image, Dark Horse, and everything else under the sun. But what sealed it for me was walking through just a normal Northeast con, walking through Artist Alley, and a guy was set up, and I noticed Taylor's name was on his book, and I was flipping through it, and the same professionalism and quality that you would have found in Taylor's work for Dark Horse or Image was in this guy's book, Mm-hmm. And that's what sealed it for me, that he will put the same amount of time and care into somebody, making 25 copies of their book to bring to a convention versus an Image book that's going to sell thousands and be on every shelf. And so he came in and he's Taylor Esposito, man. He's forgotten more about lettering than I'll ever know. And he's just a smooth pro. And he also humored all of my lettering questions along the way, which I will always appreciate. Because like I said, there's always a curiosity, and there's always definitely you're sitting at the feet of a guru asking him like, a 101 question, and he's teaching, the doctorate level.
Yeah, I love that you praising him too, because like I think a lot of times letterers don't get any appreciation in the business.
Not at all. And I'm sorry, John.
Oh no, I've actually it's kind of weird that you mentioned that, because there have been a couple of comics going around on Facebook every once in a while, because I got a lot of friends that are creators and everything, about letterers. Yeah. And about how bad it could actually look if they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly.
You can walk through any artist alley and you can see how bad it will get. And I say that as somebody who recently-ish went back and relettered my entire first book. Because once you start learning, you realize quickly how much you don't know. And I think just like anything, again, we'll go back to music and guitar, at the time, watching somebody like an Eddie Van Halen, do his thing. And you're like, I want to do that. Look at how awesome that is. Look at how easy that is. And then you pick it up and you try, and you're like, oh, the reason it looks easy is because he's really, really good. And this is really, really hard.
Yes.
And so the learning curve of lettering your first book, again, is a spike, because you're suddenly realizing everything you don't know. And the reason it looks easy is because they're really, really good.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I feel the same way about inkers too. A lot of times inkers don't get any credit, and they do an amazing job. I do also want to mention, we did get a chance to look at the books, and the art, I think, fits the style of what you're going for perfectly. And I don't know how else to say it. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of like old Archie books, but like in a good way. Like it's like Archie, but with a little bit of an edge, and I think it fits what you're doing perfectly.
Thank you. When I saw Meredith's portfolio, what struck me is that it felt grounded plus. Like, she's not photorealistic,
right?
But she's also not full-blown cartoony,
right?
Where it feels like you're watching human beings, just exaggerated enough for the comic book medium. And I got to use that to our advantage, where I could write less. Like, the number of I would look for reasons not to write any dialogue and just let Meredith put a facial reaction to it, because her facial reaction is going to be better than anything I can write.
Right.
And the writing would just get in the way of great artwork. This we kind of going back to how we started, that there is this kind of like serious character at the heart of all of this. But the story really is kind of like, I reference like Big Lebowski every now and then, because the Big Lebowski is, in theory, a simple story. He just wants his rug back. And every step of the way, it just spirals out of control.
Right.
And that was another kind of thing I wanted to play with, is can we take a simple idea? This guy just wants to get his busking spot back.
Right.
And then how can it spiral out of control the more he tries to get it back? And those over-the-top elements, and as you go into the book, the literal and figurative magical elements of this book, I mean, Meredith and Allie, because her coloring as we go through the book really just accentuates this story, and Meredith and Allie do a wonderful job of like, if we need to ground you in Charlie's apartment, it feels like, I could see this apartment. And then if we need to hit you with something bizarre and magical, then they nail it.
Yes. And again, and I think that's why the style works really well. Yeah. Because if it was too realistic, then it takes you out of the book when something magical happens. Yeah.
Well, there is one part of the book that's a little bit strange. So how much is Silver Shamrock paying you for the bear masks?
That's interesting that you say that, because I know where I first got the idea from.
Yeah.
And I know we morphed it to just, move it a couple degrees away from where I was going. But it's interesting to see what you and then other people will take from it. It's actually one of my favorite things about this book is there's just something about that deadpan bear head that you can put like any emotion on. And once Meredith started turning in kind of like her designs of the bear, I'm like, oh, we're leaning heavy into this bear. Whenever possible, we are going with this bear.
It's always staring at you from the background, like when you say leaning heavily into it, like it's a perk in the Kickstarter is a bear mask.
Yes.
Well, I like stuff. I like fun gack when it comes to Kickstarters. And I'm also I've become a sucker for pins. And so I've done 2 pins for other books. And when I was thinking about the Kickstarter, I wanted to do another pin. And kind of coming out of the gate, you could do one of Charlie. Like, again, Meredith and Allie, I think, created a recognizable character in Charlie, and specifically his hat. Mm-hmm. That's a great little character piece. But, and that might be great for like the second issue. But if we're trying to capture people right off the bat, Bearhead. Bearhead is what jumped out at us. So, we took the Bearhead as the pin, and then it is also 2020, and we are all here. And I was like, well, that could kind of be a fun mask too. So I put the idea of getting your own bear mask as the perk, and I will admit, like, I waffled on that a lot. Like at one point, I always thought it'd be funny, especially when I saw Meredith's mock-up. I'm like, that's funny. And if you go to the Kickstarter page, just search Charlie Spot on Kickstarter, you can see the mock-up. But I waffled on it. Would people actually want it? Is this something we can have fun with? Because it is a bear head, basically a bear muzzle that you'd be wearing as a mask. I've been pleasantly surprised with the number of people who like pre-launch were like, well, I'm getting a bear mask. And then
it's an add-on, so
that's where I was going to go. Of all the add-ons, and we have a pretty robust add-on list.
Yeah.
By far the bear mask is the most added on bit. So that's made me happy as well.
Yeah, it's funny too. And I do think that's a smart move. I think of things like Rick and Morty, and like, what's the biggest thing from Rick and Morty? Pickle Rick. Like, everyone is attached to Pickle Rick. It's one episode. It was silly, but it's like, that's the thing. So yeah.
Well, that and Szechuan sauce. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. I mean,
oh, those poor restaurant workers. Those poor people. They didn't ask for that.
No.
They just wanted to go home. On time.
I don't even remember it being a big deal when it first came out, and it was just so silly.
The zeitgeist picks up weird balls and just runs with them.
Yeah.
Like look, I'm a huge fan of Popeye's chicken sandwich. Mm-hmm. I will flat out admit, like in our household, Popeye's chicken sandwiches and Wendy's Frosties have like basically gotten us through these last 8 months. But rioting and lining up for hours for a chicken sandwich, again, as someone who's packed away a few over these last 8 months, I still wouldn't wait in line for hours for it. But the world's a weird, weird place, man.
Yes.
Hey, this is 2020. Anything goes.
Anything goes.
Especially bear masks.
Yeah, yes. Well, hey, and it keeps you safe.
Exactly, because that's all we want.
People are definitely going to social distance when they see you wearing it. I mean,
it's true.
So you mentioned at the beginning Claremont X-Men when you were a kid. What other books did you read when you were younger? Like what kind of got you into it?
So what got me into it is having a brother who's 9 years older than me.
Okay.
So, he's 16, 17, driving himself to the comic book store. Well, mom and dad absolutely want you to bring the 8-year-old with you to, so they can at least have a quiet house for, a few hours.
Yes.
So it's just stuff that caught my eye. I rediscovered all of those books a couple of years ago, and just flipping through it, like there are definitely some X-Men covers that jump out that I was like, I remember that. But then there's also like, apparently I was like super into Thor. I don't remember being super into Thor. But just a whole, like 7 long boxes worth of stuff. But like I said, early 80s X-Men kid, right into my veins with that. I also remember being a huge Defenders fan.
Yes.
Not remembering why I was a huge Defenders fan.
Because they're the misfits of the Marvel Universe being thrown together and going and doing the weirdest stuff.
So when I started when I had rediscovered this collection, and both of my brothers, the older and I have one younger, both basically said like, dude, you can have them. I was like, great. I had decided that my game I would play at conventions is I am going to complete my Defenders run. 1 to 151. I'm going to get them all. And so I did, years of, San Diego, New York, everything in between. So completing that entire Defenders run and then realizing there were basically like 3 issues, like random issues that were pre-Defenders. Like, well, great. Now I got to get the pre-Defenders books. And now we're going back into like early 70s. I'm like, oh, this is getting like way more expensive than I wanted it to. Like, I'm not putting my kid through college on this. It's just a dumb itch that needs to be scratched. And I have been slowly like rereading them. And it's a trip going back and reading these books, so Defenders from, where I'm at is like, maybe 74 to 76. But like kind of related, I remember getting like a digital copy of Avengers #1.
Okay.
And like, oh, Avengers #1, the one that started it all. And I'm reading it going like, this is a mess. This is garbage. How? This was in the heyday of like, all right, so there's a panel and we're going to have dialogue boxes. We're going to have captions and we're going to have thought bubbles. Right. Now over to panel 2.
Yes.
It's interesting. It's interesting to go back and read all this stuff.
And that's also when we were still kind of formatted where it was like, we have 6 panels on every page. Like we can't play with that format. And I was like, it took a long time to get where we are.
And the colors were what they were. The technology was what it was. So like, I think it's Hawkeye. It's a big purple smudge, so I'm just going to assume it's Hawkeye.
There's a reason Hulk is green and not gray. Yep.
Oh yeah, all of those. They're just big bright colors.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I've never had the itch to complete the Defenders, but I do have a large chunk of them in my collection.
It was just something. It was a fun hunt. Like, right. When I go to conventions, I don't buy a lot. I mean, if there's a plus to getting into conventions at an older age, you kind of like realize, well, I got no place to put that. Like, so that statue. Like, that statue of Taskmaster. Why do I like Taskmaster? I don't know. I just do. But, and every now and then I'll see like, oh, that's a gorgeous statue. I have no place to put it. Thank God. Or, I'd be explaining a $200 credit card bill, to what Sideshow Collectibles or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun and relatively inexpensive. Like most of those books you could find for $1. And then, the bane of my existence for a while is you always find like there's a book that you can't find. And then you realize, oh, really? It's because Hellcat appeared in, first appearance of Hellcat. So for 20 issues before it and 20 issues after it, I can get it for $1. And now I actually have to haggle so I can get, it's like I don't care about Hellcat. I have a gap that needs to be filled.
Exactly.
Like I'll work and do the research for number one, but whatever random Hellcat appearance. Oh, fun. Remember convention. Those were good.
Feels like a long time ago at this point.
How does it feel like it's been years and still weeks at the same time? This is like, I know I'm not saying anything new. I'm not breaking any ground.
No.
But, at 9, I got sent home from work and my son got sent home from school on the same day, Friday the 13th, March 13th. And how that can feel like weeks ago and years ago at the same time. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It feels weird having all this extra money.
I have been feeling the same way because, it
costs.
Yeah, I'm not driving into work anymore, so I'm not paying for parking. I'm not paying for the train or anything like that.
Gas, yeah.
Right. Where, again, I'm very lucky where I live. It's an easy shot into Boston where I worked. I'm lucky I could get away with filling my car like once a week. Now, like once 3 weeks, every 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, do you also have, sorry, we're going off on a tangent, but I also have a bit of like guilt about like, that I am saving money during all of this, that like I'm okay. I'm very lucky that my gig just went to my house.
It's the same with us. We're
well, not all of us.
Right. Well, you're writing books. I mean,
it doesn't quite replace the money I lost on video work that has died. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, John and I are software developers and our day job, so it was just like a very easy transition for us. But yeah, poor JD.
Yeah.
But the money I was saving, I was talking about was, going to conventions for us is like,
there's that.
The New York Comic Con I would have dropped $3,000 and most of that would have been on the hotel.
I was paying this year, remember?
I had already had a book. Yeah, now we know why COVID hit now.
I can't help it.
Damn.
But yeah, man, I was home every weekend during the summer, which has not happened in 10 years, whether it was going to San Diego or, on a normal year, I'd be doing 5, maybe 7 conventions, just setting up a table and doing it on my own, and especially in August, for Boston, we've got like 2 or 3 like big-ish shows around the area. And like most of my Augusts are like, gone. And that's also when my son's birthday is. And that always got a little negotiating. Like I was trying to go through the eye of the needle with that one.
Right.
But yeah, we've been home.
Well, your son had a good birthday this year then, right? He spent it with you.
Yes. Here's the thing. And by the way, pull me back into any line of conversation you want. Because this is kind of like the George experience. It's like, ooh, is that a thread? Let me follow it. But I mean, like I said, since March 13th, we have literally been on the same couch.
Yeah.
Since then. And 95% of it has been, good to great. Which I am so incredibly thankful for. So he's 11. And I couldn't imagine going through this with a kid younger than that. Like, right now, like we get along and it's wonderful. But he's also 11 years old, which means give him his Switch or TikTok, and he's pretty much self-contained and self-entertained. Right. I've got coworkers with 3-4-year-olds.
Oh, what's that like?
When the kids, JD. So this. At that age, you are their entertainment system. So like I said, I couldn't imagine going through this with a younger kid. And also at 11, and again, I give him so much credit for this. He gets it. He knows what's going on and he knows why. And so he can rationalize, I understand, but it still sucks. Yes. Like, dude, you're doing better than a lot of people when it comes to there were plans for getting a bunch of his friends together for his birthday and you know, all that stuff. We couldn't do it, you know, but he understands, which again, he blows me away with, you know, how he's handling all of this, because there are people 3 or 4 times his age that are not handling it as classy and thoughtful as he is.
We'll leave it at that. I think that's the best way to put it.
This is how we're going to get demonetized.
So besides Charlie's Place, what are some other books that you've written that people can get their hands on?
Sure. If you go to homelesscomics.com, that's my imprint, and you'll find the 4 books that I've been a part of. The first book that we kind of talked about earlier is called Healed, and it's what would happen tomorrow if all life-threatening disease and illness went away today. Which was a lot more interesting before now.
I know it looked like it looked like the end of the Star Wars trilogy with all the parties on all the planets.
Right. Yeah. So I did that. That was the book that was essentially born out of that. How not to pitch a comic book with my friend Griffin S. So that graphic novel's up there. After that, Griffin and I wanted to work together again, but something a little less serious. So we had noticed that there were books for adults at these conventions, adult readers. And that there were kids' books, but there weren't a lot of books that I would kind of say like that Looney Tunes model where everybody can watch it together and everybody's laughing, but maybe at different things.
Right.
So we wanted to try and do that for our next book. And so we created something called Baby, which is essentially Clifford meets Godzilla, where the a baby monster from the deep accidentally starts destroying Atlantic City in the most adorable way possible. And it was kind of inspired by watching my son learn how to walk, where you realize that it's not that he wants to knock things over, he's just bad at walking. So what if all these monsters, from the deep, it's not that they hate Tokyo or New York, they've just never walked on land before, and it's a big misunderstanding. So that was the second one that we did, and then the third book is called Silent Night, and it answers the question, what does Santa Claus do with the rest of his year? And we think obviously he'd be a crime-fighting, crime noir private eye using his Santa powers to help find lost children.
I love this book.
Well, that's obvious. I mean,
and JD,
I don't know why I didn't think of that.
JD, you can check me on this, but I think you're the one that named it.
Possibly.
I think you're the one that threw out the title Silent Night.
Might have been.
And immediately I was like, oh, that's it.
Was that in class or something like that?
I want to say it was, maybe it was.
I don't remember.
I'll
take the credit. I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely. Just know, like in my Swiss cheese brain, I give you the credit for that.
I'll take it.
And then, JD, I can't remember if you were part of this. Were you part of Great Zombies in History?
No, I didn't take place in that one.
Okay. So, and then there's a fourth book. It's an anthology called Great Zombies in History. The idea being that our history books have been lying to us forever, and that zombies clearly have played a much bigger role in historical events than anyone's willing to admit. So we're getting the truth out there one story at a time. And all 4 of those books are up on Homeless Comics. You can download free previews and you can order them directly from me.
Cool. Yeah, I'm shocked that JD had any collaboration with you at all. JD doesn't like working with others.
Not really.
Maybe I got it in before he was too cynical. I got grandfathered in.
No, I didn't get to do it because I was trying to get the stuff for Deluge up and running at the time when you guys did that, and all my time, money, and effort went into that for 4 years.
Yep.
So obviously you have in my opinion, you have a great sense of humor.
Well, thank you.
And I think everyone else here agrees. Where are some of the things that you get inspiration from then?
There's so much. I love great writing and I love great acting. And I that might be more pedestrian than I mean it to be, but like I ruin stuff we watch for my wife because like it'll be the tiniest look, the tiniest glance, the tiniest movement or just a simple word, and I will like make her pause it, and I will have to like break it down and dive into it. So it's just, I try to consume because I know it'll help me when I create, the breathing in is the consuming, and then the breathing out is the writing. When it comes, so comics are like the big consistent thing that I read. And I just kind of I try and keep my eye out for books that just sound interesting and ideas that just sound interesting. There's some favorite writers and artists of mine, that are kind of like, I'll give them any chance on anything they write, but then just trying to discover other writers and artists out there and to see what they're doing. I mentioned Terry Moore and Strangers in Paradise. I'm like 20 years late to that. Right. But it hit me like a ton of bricks, just I'm sure it hit everybody else in whatever, 93, 95. And just kind of, I think I said it earlier, there's always a curiosity, and I'm a guy who loves going behind the curtain. And like, that was awesome. How did you do it?
Right.
So when I see something masterful, especially creative, there's a part of me that wants to dissect it and figure out, how did you do it? Like I said, it's out of that curiosity, and then maybe, it's a tool I can sharpen for myself. So if this is dodging the question, I apologize. I just try and take in and keep an open mind.
That's not dodging the question at all. I think, as someone who tries to be creative himself, like, I totally get what you're saying. Will our audience get it? I don't know, but hopefully. And it's funny because it's making me think, like, it's one of those things where I love to go through Artist Alley and try to find interesting new books, new writers that I haven't read before, and get them. And, and we can't do that right now. So that's why I'm kind of hoping we do shows like this, get your name out there, and, and people can discover your work. Because it's like, I think that's important. We need to stop recycling the same ideas in Hollywood over and over again. We need to get new creative blood out there.
Yeah, I appreciate it. John, like you were saying earlier, like, yes, I saved money as well, but that's because when I go to New York Comic Con or San Diego, there's a good chunk of my budget that is put aside. And especially New York Comic Con, I will put aside hours to slowly walk up and down those aisles. And David, like you were saying, to find something new. One, it's because I'm curious, and two, definitely there's a karma bit to it. Like, if I can throw some good karma into the small press indie, grinder artists, section, that, when I pick my head up every now and then, it's like, I'm making things too. Like, maybe the karma will shine back.
Does paying JD to kill me count as karma?
No, it counts in supporting your friend.
Oh, right.
But what I've realized is, or I guess what I've done is, instead of going to shows and, happily throwing money around like a drunken sailor in Artist Alley, man, I am backing so many Kickstarters these days. Like these 8 months, like the number of Kickstarters I've backed, and like at levels I probably never would have. Like, soft cover, sure. A year ago, this was like, no, I need the hardcover with the foil stamp. I absolutely, positively need that.
Bear mask, yes.
Yes. Hashtag bear mask, yes.
I've done the same thing, actually. Like, I've put a couple of $100 into Kickstarters over the past 8 months. Just because I've got, like I said, like, we spend $3,000 on New York Comic Con, but that's not counting the extra 1,000 that I would bring and hit up my favorite artist, go see if there are any new comics, like Dave was saying, and it just I miss was it Awesome Con in DC?
Yeah.
I miss New York Comic Con, the Great Philly Comic Con in Oaks. Because it's I mean, every once in a while you have to wade through a lot, but every once in a while you run across something that like takes you by surprise, and it's just so good.
And worst case scenario, even if it's something that doesn't, when you do read it, you have made that person's con a little better. And I mean, speaking as somebody who, like I said, at a minimum 5 to 7 shows a year, like you're living and dying, mentally, maybe physically, financially, with which each of those sales, so trying to take that karma and putting it back into Kickstarters, or just finding other ways to support people, like so the Jimmy Olsen book that Fraction and Steve Lieber did.
Yes.
I missed it on its floppy run, but I was going to pick it up in trade. But then, Steve Lieber's like, hey, buy it direct from me, and I'll, for, whatever, for a little bit more, I'll do a sketch and a blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to do that. Like let me support Steve directly versus Amazon, who doesn't need it.
Right. Exactly.
So just trying to find, other ways to support the artist, because it is what it is, and those are the things that we can do to help.
Yes, and I'm going to derail the show, and this is an audio podcast, but John, we've been talking for an hour, and this is the first time I've noticed your Christmas lights on in the background, and it's kind of distracting.
I found them very relaxing. I love his color scheme going on.
It's not a color scheme. It's Santa threw up on my floor. I'm still trying to untangle them.
That's
day 3.
Yeah.
So I'll it'll look much better next week, but I'm still. I've spent half my day trying to untangle.
That's why I throw them out and buy new. I mean,
it's just easier that way.
Yeah.
So yeah. Now I'm actually, we're talking about this. I'm looking at the list of Kickstarters that I've backed, and it's like 8. I've backed 8, and I spent a lot of money on really.
So,
this is good.
Yeah.
Oh, and we have backed yours, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that this is normally the point where we kind of ask people what cons they're going to be at next year.
Yeah.
God willing. There's a friend of mine who's a great supporter of local creators and artists. He runs a podcast called Sci-Fi Saturday Night. He was supposed to run his first show this year. A creator focused, lovely one-day event, Upper Valley Comic Con in New Hampshire. Hopefully that will be happening in May. I told Boston Comic Con to roll my table over to 2021, so hopefully that'll happen. There is, I don't know how long of a drive it would be for y'all. But have you heard of Terrificon?
Yes.
Cool.
I've actually been there.
Great.
Yeah. We haven't been as a podcast, but we actually have been invited twice.
Nice. If you can pull it off, and if it's safe for everybody, please check it out. It is next to Boston Comic Con. It's probably the second longest show we've been going to. And it's put on really well. And as a low-level degenerate gambler, it's held at Mohegan Sun.
Yes.
So for 2.5, 3 days, I get to merge all of my favorite things. Comic-Con, selling my books, and like I said, low-level poker. It's great. So definitely, if you get the chance, check it out. And outside of that, taking just a lot of this, just case by case. Like I really hope we can start like planning for the future, like planning rather than crossing off the future.
Yeah. There's supposed to be like 3. I mean, there's 3 different vaccines. At least 2 of them will start to be available at the end of December, if not January. And then, by mid June, we should be getting back to normal.
That would be very nice.
But there's going to be,
Sean,
it's going to be, it's what?
You actually said something kind of positive. What happened?
It's dark, man.
This is what happens when you spend 2 hours trying to find one end of a string of lights. Just one of them. You kind of twist your mind.
I feel like we missed an opportunity by not just you setting up a hard camera and just recording the whole event. I do feel like we missed out on a
no, that would be completely
sensation.
Demonetized. Let me tell you.
Not for kids.
No. Oh, it would make sailors blush. But
yeah, man, it's just it's just. I think the reason I've been going to Kickstarter as much as I have, and I've become like with creator friends and my circles, I've been so vocal in supporting them, is this is a cluster, man. Mm-hmm. And I think if anything, I would really hope that this has blown the tortured artist makes the greatest works. I hope it blows that cliche out of the water. Because if you listen to anybody, any medium, it's really hard to create right now, because you actually need a quiet brain to create your best work. And when a portion of your brain, your mileage may vary, if a portion of your brain is just kind of like screaming into the void on a consistent basis, the mental energy it takes to just kind of stay calm, stay sane, and then to try and find that mental energy to now go into pretend land. It's tough, man. So finding those Kickstarters to back, those projects to back, the artists to back or support, it's been one of the ways I've been trying to, like, as much as one person can, kind of like just balance the scales of the universe at the moment. I might not be able to help 300 million people, but in my little circle, if somebody's not feeling it, or whatever it is, the imposter syndrome, whatever pops in, like at least I can put my cape on for that, and and help out that way. I can help somebody fund their project and get it out into the world, and let them notch that win.
Yes. Have you, I'm just kind of curious, because I heard something the other day that like blew my mind. Have you been doing any signings at comic shops? Because one of my best friends from high school works for the city of Philadelphia. And on election day, he went to a local comic shop after he voted. And I can't remember, I believe it was John Romita Jr. was in this local shop signing. And I'm like, on election day? He's like, yeah, and if you came in and you had voted, like, he gave you an extra, he gave you one of his books for free. And I'm like,
that he may have been, I know Tom King did that.
Oh, that's who it is. That's who it was. It was Tom. That's right. It was Tom King. I wish that's what it was. Okay.
So, no, I haven't been doing any signings for the very unsexy reason there's nothing for me to sign at the moment. It's just that, and I have an incredibly supportive local comic book shop. I mean, so it's New England Comics, and it's the Malden store, which is in my hometown. And man, like, anybody that's thinking about like getting into comics and making their own, don't overlook your local comic book shop as a resource,
right?
Or because who likes making comics? Comic book readers. You know where they are? The comic book store. You know who knows the artists and the writers who are also buying their comic books there? The managers, the sales associate. So there's that. But then also, just, man, if you want kind of like a download on the business side, I can't thank the manager's name's Alan enough for that. So they've been incredibly supportive. It's just, haven't been able to do anything, this year. I mean, they've been wonderful. I've been, they've had me there for Free Comic Book Day, something like 7 out of the last, 8 years or something like that. And I think the 1 year is like, I got a gig in New Hampshire. I can't pull off both. But so no, I haven't been able to, and plus, I've also realized I have too much guilt to like do anything other than go into the store, buy my books. I do consider Alan a friend, so I want to know how he's doing. I want to know how his wife is doing.
Right.
And then I feel like I need to go.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to risk anybody.
Yeah.
You know? And every 3 months or so, I would just go there on on a Sunday when it was quiet.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just hang out and just pick his brain.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I always feel guilty when I'm like, all right, thanks everybody, bye. And I'm just out.
Yep.
But I do not feel this is the time to just hang out at the store for hours on end.
Yeah. No,
Which
exactly.
is a shame because we have like Amalgam Comics near us.
Mm-hmm.
And like, it also has pastries and, it's
coffee
kind of
shop.
Yeah, it's a coffee shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
And it's the perfect place to hang, and you can't. I mean,
well, David, what you were saying earlier, finding your family, finding the place where you're comfortable with. I mean, for a lot of us, that's the comic book shop.
Yep.
The people there, the books, that's where we discover things, new books, writers, artists, stories. For me, that's where I get an education on this industry I want to be a part of.
Right.
It's where I have made friends. Some of my most incredible backers on these Kickstarters are people from the store.
Yeah.
makes sense.
It's a tremendous community.
Yeah.
I mean, no, go ahead.
It's exactly where this podcast was born out of. It's conventions and going to comic book shops and having that feeling of family and wanting to extend it out and show it to the world. And yeah. So exactly. It's a great community, and, people should appreciate it that are part of it. So we talked a lot about your, how you got where you were, inspirations, and your successes. We usually sign off the podcast by saying, "Don't let your cape get caught in the door," which it started as a joke, but it actually kind of has morphed into like, "Don't let your shortcomings or your foibles get in your way." So what's a shortcoming or a difficulty in your life that you've gotten over to get where you are?
The first thing I will say is I haven't gotten over anything.
That's good.
It is and I say this because this is stuff I think about a lot. Mm-hmm. So what I'm about to say might sound confident and informed, but I really wanted to throw out there, everything I'm about to say is something I'm actively working on.
Okay.
So if anybody else is going through this, I want them to feel like, they're not alone. So we talked about imposter syndrome. So let's just stay there for a second. Mm-hmm. Because again, I could double the length of this podcast with my Psych 101 creative, thoughts. So the thing I am constantly working on and occasionally overcome is our dumb lizard brain. Mm-hmm. And the dumb lizard brain at one point was very important. It's what let us know that saber-toothed tigers were dangerous and we should run away from them, or we will die. And that lizard brain was awesome. Enough of us didn't get eaten by saber-toothed tigers that we are here. We got to evolve to where, we now get to be creative, a species, The problem is the lizard brain is still in our head, and our lizard brain doesn't understand the difference of being afraid of a saber-toothed tiger and being afraid somebody won't like your Kickstarter. The brain,
I see how they're related. I mean,
the brain, it just hits that fear, danger part of our lizard brain, and for some people that manifests itself as imposter syndrome. They're going to find out I'm not as good as I think I am.
Right.
I'm just fooling people, and at some point, this is all going to come crashing down. Who am I to launch a Kickstarter? Who am I to put music out? Who am I to write? Who am I, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. That all comes out of this lizard brain, which, bless its heart, it thinks it's protecting us.
Right.
Because it doesn't know any different. And so that was a lot, like, that who am I? Why should I even try? When I started reading stuff, when Neil Gaiman says, oh yeah, I suffer from imposter syndrome. When Stephen King says he has imposter syndrome, that was a light bulb moment where it's like, okay, it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
It's our stupid lizard. Everybody is dealing with it on some level. So it's not a personal failure. It's our DNA that at one point served a great purpose. But it's still hanging out here,
right.
That was eye-opening. That's when I started feeling like, okay, this is something I can work on. And so just recognizing it, naming it, being able to put some sort of tangibility to it,
right,
was a nice first step. The second thing that I do, and I'll throw it out there for anybody else kind of going through this, is try and find tangible things to balance the scales with. So the imposter syndrome is all, it's all vapor. It's just a dumb voice in your head that gets to talk, but there's nothing actually to it. It's all BS in our heads. So what I keep an eye out for is what are those wins that are real and true. For example, let's just take the Charlie Spot Kickstarter. There are, to me, a surprising amount of people who are backing this campaign that have backed multiple projects in the past. They are not my friends. They are not my family. They're people who discovered one of my projects, liked it, and want more. That's real. That's legit. That's earned. This is not a charity. They don't know me. They don't owe me anything. I don't owe them anything. They like the work for the work, and they want to keep seeing that. So when I've got a few dozen people who fit that camp, those are real people. That, again, it's not charity. It's not mom trying to help her, her boy out. These are people choosing to, support you. That's real. When we did have conventions, again, doing it for 10 years, one of the pluses is you kind of become a fixture.
Right.
And the handful of people that would come to Boston Comic Con every year and like, hey, what's new? And I would point to the new thing and they go, great. And they just hand me money. I didn't have to pitch it. I didn't have to do anything. They knew me. Right. They knew our work, and sight unseen, they were ready to support it. That's real. So when I sit there and I start going down the nobody cares spiral, it's not that I can solve that. That's DNA. But what I can do is I can counter it with these real things that I have clocked, I have given myself credit for, and just try and lean into that.
Right.
That's kind of like my I don't know. That's how I'm trying to get better every day. And I guess just the last thing I would throw out there, because again, this could go on forever. The last thing I would go out there is nobody is perfect out of the gate.
Right.
If you are worried your drawing isn't going to be good enough, your writing isn't going to be good enough, your whatever isn't going to be good enough. All I would say is go back to the first season of The Simpsons. Watch a couple episodes.
Right.
Skip ahead 7 years. It's exponentially improved.
Right.
The Simpsons, when you say The Simpsons, season 1 is not what you have in mind. But that's where they started. They had to start there to get to season 7, to season 30, to the Simpsons that you have locked in your head.
Right.
And you could find all sorts of other examples out there. But the only way you get to season 7, season 30, whatever, is by doing the work, by doing that first thing.
Right.
That first thing is not supposed to be perfect. It won't be perfect. You will be a better creator and collaborator years down the road, but you can't become that better collaborator, that better creator without doing the first thing.
Right.
And again, when I kind of clocked that was actually kind of the permission I gave myself to do 664. I didn't know anything about web series. The longest I had done is maybe an 8-minute short film. I don't even know if I'd written a full screenplay at that point. But it sounded interesting. I had an idea, and I had an idea of how it could turn itself, into 20 episodes that first season. I was also very fortunate that I had a ton of creative friends around to help bring it to life. But knowing that I could learn along the way was the permission to just start. And you watch, go to the first season of 664, you'll see like the first 3 or 4 episodes, we didn't realize how important lighting was. By episode 5, we realized how important lighting was. So, in real time, in like 7-minute chunks, you can see like, oh, they shot this on a different weekend and they took everything they learned from the first weekend and rolled it in.
Right.
So yeah. And I guess just in general, just, as much as you can, be kind to yourself, in non-pandemic, worlds, be kind to yourself, especially now, be kind to yourself. Cause no one's ever lived through this.
Right.
No one knows what we're supposed to do. And we're all making it up as we go along. So
very true.
Be kind to yourself. See, I told you, 1 question, 3 answers.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm kind of afraid to then ask our follow-up, which is usually the question we end on.
I'll keep it tight, but please understand, when I said cut me off, I didn't mean I meant that. Because
okay.
I know who I am. This is your house. You tell me.
It's fine. I love everything that you're saying. So the question we normally end on is, how do you measure success?
Oh, fuck. Great question. Sorry. Now you're demonetized, but now you also just hit another thing that I'm working on. I am trying to be fair and kind to myself. Do I wish this was a Kickstarter that the Kickstarter gods smiled upon and I wouldn't have to post about it at all and I could just watch that ticker go up? Of course, that's the dream. But those are the unicorns. So right now, as we're talking, how do I measure success? By at least 30%, more people have responded to this campaign than before. That's real. This is the biggest campaign I've tried to pull off. And barring something out of the ordinary happening, it's going to fund, I tried to improve my craft, and I believe I did. I believe this is the best thing I've written. I believe there were some bars I was trying to jump over. There were some things I was curious and wanted to try. And from what I can tell, it looks like it worked. Okay. So that's great. Continuously checking in with myself. Am I being a good collaborator? Am I being a better collaborator than I was last year, that type of thing. I guess it's a very long way of just saying it's Dory. It's just keep swimming. Can the next song I write, can I engineer it and mix it better and faster than the last one? The next comic book pitch I put together, can it be better and more professional than the last one? That's it. It's can I feel myself improving?
Right.
And can I give myself a win if that improvement is in the grand scale small? Mm-hmm. That if I can start doing that, that's a big improvement for me. That it's about running a small campaign, but it's a big campaign for me, and not it didn't make $1 million.
Right. Exactly.
Well,
I think I love it.
Yeah.
But it, like I said, it's just trying to stay contained, stay honest.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
That's a good answer.
Okay, cool.
So John, JD, do you have anything you want to add? Because JD, you've been quiet and you're in trouble.
Trying to stay out of trouble over here. I knew how George was going to go, so I just let him do his thing. Thanks for coming on, man.
Oh, dude, I mean, thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for your support for 11 years. That is amazing, and it's amazing how our little class, our little cabal, has continued to support each other.
Yeah,
for 11 years. I think that says a lot of just the character of the people. And let's give credit to the character that Andy Schmidt and Comics Experience fosters. That these random people 11 years ago, there's a good core of us, like I said, that are still supporting each other, financially, mentally, physically when possible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, thank you for your support and your encouragement, and thank you for bringing me into your world and getting a chance to talk to John and David and, babble for a lot longer than I'm sure any of y'all thought about a project that I've been waiting 2+ years to tell people about, which is the excuse I say for why I'm babbling so much. Is, like I said, this is like 2 years of a kettle getting ready to burst.
Yes.
So I thank you guys very much for letting me talk about this and kind of letting it go wherever it went. Feel free to edit this all. If you come back with a 20-minute episode, I'm like, yeah, they're right. I get it.
That's not how this show works. We're very free form. We
warts and all.
Yes, warts and all.
Far too much work.
No, it's about the natural conversation, because I've listened to podcasts that are so heavily edited, you can tell like they cut a lot of stuff out, and it's like it just doesn't feel natural anymore after that. So
it's actually what I like about the medium. I love, because I'm also a guy that loves listening to experts talk about their craft. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I do love the longer free form, like diving into the weeds. I don't need the 5-minute gloss over. Like, give me an hour and give me like the nitty gritty details of what you do and how you do it. I'm a sucker for that stuff.
And this week you get to be the expert. So
it's everything I can not to like run away from that. I'm just a dude who has stayed curious and who is trying to get a little bit better.
So I'm sure all of our listeners will want to know, where can they find this expert online?
I mainly hang out on Twitter with my handle is @LazyHorde, LazyHord. So Twitter's the main place that I hang out with. I hang out at on Facebook. If you just go Facebook /Homeless Comics, you can, if you want to stay on top of the comic stuff, it's there as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, homelesscomics.com. If any of the books that we've been talking about sound interesting, you can download like free 8-page previews of all the books there. And if you head over to the Kickstarter, which runs until like 11:59 p.m. on the 30th, you can check out Charlie Spot, which is has been a labor of love for, like I said, over 2 years. I believe in this book with all my heart. The four of us, Taylor, Allie, and Meredith, I can confidently say we worked our asses off to make this as good a book and a story it can be. I'm incredibly proud of this. I'm incredibly proud of the team. And I kind of want to just show them off to everybody. So if you go to Kickstarter and search Charlie Spot, you can preview the book. You can hear a little more of the backstory. And then also, if these books of mine do sound interesting, you can back Charlie Spot and you can pick up some of the graphic novels along the way.
Cool. And for all listeners out there, of course, as always, the link to the Kickstarter is in the description. So make sure you check it out. Like I said, George was kind enough to send us a preview of the books, and they're really good. Like,
they are, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be doing yourself a disfavor by not backing this project. So on that note, I'm going to say thank you, George. And as always, boys and girls, thanks for listening. And don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.